So much has happened in the past like 4 hours of Stranger Things, and there's like one character I really want to talk about more than anything else, which is the Mind Flayer. Specifically talking about the Mind Flayer's connection to Vecna. But before I say any more words, there's gonna be spoilers. Spoilers. Okay, great. Now that I know you're cool, so Vecna is the Mind Flayer. I know, right? It's like, what a twist. Who would have saw that coming? Well, a lot of people did, but the point remains, what a twist. Anyway, now that season 4 is concluded and we know a heck of a lot more information about like everything, I wanted to make a full comprehensive guide to Vecna and the Mind Flayer because they're basically the same person. Because they are the same person. And don't worry if you've already seen my Vecna Explained series, because I'm going to be adding way more information in this video. So the Mind Flayer is actually going to help us better understand Vecna, the Freddy Krueger of Stranger Things. Both Freddy and Vec are villains that haunt people in their dreams. Both only target teenagers, or at least Vecna only targeted teenagers for the, majority of season 4. But when Vecna was operating as the Mind Flayer, he totally targeted everyone else. Both Freddy and Vecna have the claw thing going on, and both were banished from society and burned after they killed a bunch of children. The actor Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger in pretty much all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, also plays Vecna's father, Victor Creel. Oh, also, back in season 1 when the Demogorgon tried to break through the wall, it stretched out the wood the same way that Freddy does during this scene in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. So there's freaking Freddy Krueger references all over this series. Vecna used to be this kid known as Henry Creel up until Henry used his psychic abilities to kill off his family and frame his dad for the murders. You know, classic adolescent shenanigans. Henry killed off his family because he believed he lived in a world that was cruel and oppressive. A world dictated by made-up rules determined by seconds, minutes, days, and other measurements of time. This would make Vecna the antithesis of the nuclear family and the average small-town life that's associated with a place like Hawkins. A place where nothing ever happens. Nothing. However, I'm just gonna say it. I'm saying it. Vecna is kind of a hypocrite when it comes to this philosophy, because for someone who is against the mundane routine of our world, his killings are very timed and repetitive. Vecna's ritual of him taking a life has a 6-day timeline, possibly based on the 6 days Henry spent in a coma, and each victim gets claimed 24 hours after their first vision. The clock is also ticking 4 times for the 4 kills that he needs to perform. Anyway, going back to Vecna's origin story, in 1959, Henry became the first of Dr. Brenner's test subjects at the Hawkins facility. Henry's father, Victor Creel, was framed for the eyeball murders and was subsequently locked away at Penhurst Asylum. Henry was declared dead, and when he woke from a coma, Brenner had imprisoned him at Hawkins, marking Henry as his new identity, number 1. And I feel like this is as good of a time as any to mention Terry Ives. This woman right here, who is part of an MKUltra study in college, she didn't know she was pregnant during the time she went through the experiments, so she ended up giving birth to a kid with superpowers. That child would later be known as Jane, who would go on to be known as 11. The government erased Jane's birth certificate and record from the hospital, then paid off everyone to confirm that Terry had a miscarriage, although she didn't. Hawkins took Jane, or now 11, from her mother and made her another test subject at the facility. When looking at 11's backstory, it's safe to assume that the other test subjects at Hawkins pre-massacre were given their psychic abilities the same way as 11, as all their mothers must have went through some experiments, which would explain how Hawkins' lab knew how to get a hold of these kids. And I also think it's safe to assume that Henry was given his powers under similar circumstances, explaining how Henry's mother knew that Henry was messing with the family. And it would also explain why she wanted to send him away to someone like Dr. Brenner. Over time, Dr. Brenner realized that he was unable to control number 1, so Brenner placed this implant in his neck that would subdue his psychic abilities. An implant ironically referred to as soteria, meaning deliverance, aka being set free. Brenner continued working on the new group of numbers or test subjects while forcing number 1 to work as a normal person at the lab. What could possibly go wrong? Over time, number 1 attempted to slowly turn 11 against Dr. Brenner, convincing her to escape with him. Then number 1 brings 11 to the boiler room, which is definitely another reference to Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger's boiler room in A Nightmare on Elm Street is equivalent to Vecna's torn apart house in the Upside Down. Anyway, the boiler room is where number 1 shows 11 an exit that she would later crawl out of. We see the exit point of this drainage pipe back in season 1 episode 2, The Weirdo on Maple Street. Anyway, in the boiler room, 11 frees number 1 from the implant, allowing number 1 to kill everyone at the facility, including all the test subjects. Where was number 8 during all this? Who knows? She definitely escaped beforehand. Is she still canon at this point? It's like really bothering me. After being given a whole heck of a lot of exposition, 11 denies number 1's offer to join him, responding with the first word she's ever said in the show. My favorite part about number 1 and Elf fighting is the way that they filmed it. In this shot of 11, the colors of the rainbow are going in one direction, while in this shot of Vecna, the colors of the rainbow are going in the complete opposite direction, signifying how Vecna is going to be put in the Upside Down. When El banishes number 1 to the Upside Down, also known as the Veil of Shadows, he discovers these particles to utilize and transform into the Mind Flayer, manipulating these particles the same way that he would later go on to control the Demogorgon, the Flayed, etc. At his old house in Hawkins, Henry discovered a nest of Black Widow spiders. He found commonalities between the spiders and himself, as both of them are solitary creatures who are misunderstood. In the lore of D&D, the Mind Flayer believes that he's the master race, and views all other races as inferior. Vecna clearly looks down at humans and sees everyone, especially people like Dr. Brenner, as less than himself. So number 1 was desperate to transcend from his human form to a different one. Number 1 claimed that the spiders are the gods of our world, so he created the Mind Flayer in their image, the perfect design to represent the god of the Upside Down. Vecna is responsible for the Upside Down we know and love today. You can really see how much Vecna transformed the Upside Down to his own design. It starts as this yellow sunsetty vibe, but then gets changed to this black and red color scheme matching the colors of a Black Widow spider. Anyway, Dustin was wrong. For the first time, I know Dustin is the guy who thinks, but he was wrong when he said that Vecna is the equivalent of a 5-star general, as Vecna is the one who controls the Mind Flayer, who controls the hive mind. The particles that make up the Mind Flayer are just another tool that Vecna utilizes, like the Demogorgons or the Demodogs or the Flayed or the Tendrils or the Bats, or you get the point by now. It's Vecna who is controlling the Upside Down. Seeing the Demogorgons roaming around during Vecna's arrival in the Upside Down proves that the creatures inhabiting the realm are sentient, independent creatures who have just become flayed or controlled, which is why we saw some humanity in Dart back in season 2, because like humans, they're not one-dimensional creatures. In season 2, when Will was possessed by the Mind Flayer, he became part of the hive mind, so he could feel parts of the Upside Down that were being burned. Being part of the Mind Flayer's hive mind means that Will was part of the Flayed. The Flayed being where the Mind Flayer takes over the victim's mind, and the victim basically becomes part of him. Once you become Flayed, you never really escape Vecna. We're about 2 seasons past the exorcism of Will Byers, and Will can still sense when the Mind Flayer is near because he still has a connection to him. And in season 3, we saw that all members of the Flayed could feel when one of them gets hurt. So it was a smart choice at the end of volume 4 to have Jim, Joyce, and Arrowfingers over here to be fighting the Demogorgons and Demodogs in Russia, as it did have an effect on the battle between everyone else and Vecna. By the way, I'm just gonna say that Will has it kinda rough with the whole, being haunted for most of his childhood. And I feel like after season 2, the writers just decided to make everyone stop caring about him.
Guys, I'm still here. Guys.
There's even that moment during volume 4 where they're at the skating rink and you can see this one guy with a video camera, and the date that we see on the video is March 22nd, which is Will's birthday, meaning everyone forgot about his birthday. Anyway, who cares about Will? Back to Vecna. Vecna wanted to combat the supposed unnatural structure of our world by feeding on the weak and bringing balance and order to an unstable ecosystem. Acting like the Black Widow spiders he grew to admire. Back in season 2, it's explained that the Mind Flayer wants to spread and take over other dimensions, destroying our world as we know it in order to conquer us all. And the Mind Flayer did try to spread into our world throughout the entire series. At first, he was just waiting for someone to cast a Shadow Walk, aka creating a massive amount of energy to open a tear in space and time to create a gate. Vecna / the Mind Flayer has had this grudge against 11 throughout the entire series. It wasn't because Elle shut the gate on him back in season 2, it was because she turned him into the monster he is today. Vecna never left the part of the Upside Down that's right over Hawkins, which is why the Russians needed to be in Hawkins and operate from the Starcourt Mall in order to open the doorway into the Upside Down. In season 3, it's revealed that Vecna wants to build, but he also wants to prioritize killing 11 and getting his revenge.
All this time, we've been building it. We've been building it for you.
When Vecna first arrived in the realm, it looked like a foreign planet with no trace of Hawkins anywhere. So it appears that Vecna turned the Upside Down into a reflection of Hawkins in order to better carry out his plan of taking over everything. Vecna being revealed as the Mind Flayer means that Will and Billy were under the curse of Vecna, which is why the methods of breaking from the possession of the Mind Flayer and the curse of Vecna are pretty similar. So Vecna trained Eleven to focus on memories that made her sad or angry. This explains how Vecna / the Mind Flayer uses his own powers. The Mind Flayer is able to form such a powerful connection with his victims by using their past trauma to taunt them, which subsequently breaks them down and makes them weaker, getting the victim to the point where they have headaches or nosebleeds like 11 or 1 every time they use their powers. Vecna / the Mind Flayer uses his victims' sad or anger-inducing memories against them, going after his victims like he went after his father, as he made Victor relive the memory of ordering a shelling on a place where he suspected German troops to be, but Victor was wrong and his decision resulted in the death of an infant child. Vecna would end up doing the same thing to Chrissy, Patrick, Fred, Max, and Nancy. So the way to combat the curse of Vecna / the Mind Flayer is using happy or good memories, which can be triggered by music. When Victor was in the flashback thinking he was about to get killed, he heard the song Dream a Little Dream of Me by Doris Day. He followed the voice and was able to escape. Max used Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush to escape the nightmare she was gonna get killed in. Back in season 1, the one thing that kept Will alive longer than someone like Barb is that he kept singing the song Should I Stay or Should I Go to himself during the entire time he was in the Upside Down. In season 2, when Will became possessed by the Mind Flayer, the way they were able to break through and make contact with Will was by playing his favorite music and reminding him of their favorite memories with him. Joyce reminds Will of his birthday on March 22nd and tells him a story about him turning 8 and getting a bunch of crayons and drawing a rainbow spaceship. Jonathan reflects on the memory of him and Will constructing Castle Byers, and Mike reminds Will of the first day they met. This allowed Will to break through enough to communicate with the group using Morse code. 11 was able to reach Flayed Billy by reminding him of this 7-foot wave he told his mother about, then further describing the memory of him and his mother on that beach. Throughout the series, Vecna / the Mind Flayer was reliant on Hawkins' lab or the Russians having gates open to the Upside Down, but after just so many failures, he decided to open his own gates. From his time as the Mind Flayer, Vecna found a way to make a powerful psychic connection with his victim, a connection powerful enough to rip a hole in the fabric of time and space. Opening a gate at Eddie Munson's house on the street where Fred died, Watergate, and Max technically dying for 1 minute allowed for the final gate to open in the Creel house. During this process of the 4 gates connecting and destroying Hawkins, it resulted in Jason getting split into 2. How do I feel about Jason's death? I don't know. I'm pretty 50-50 about it. But the way Nancy shot Vecna out of the window was definitely a reference to the first Halloween film, where Dr. Loomis shot Michael Myers and he fell out the window. And then when Loomis went to check on the supposed dead body of Michael Myers, he was gone. Same with Vecna. So in my Vecna Explained Part 2 video, I went into a lot of D&D lore, and I mentioned that in the Dungeon Master's Guide 2nd edition, over time Vecna's hand will corrupt the user. And it gets to the point where the only way to remove the hand from the user is to chop it off. And then I predicted that for Stranger Things Volume 4 Part 2, they were going to chop off Vecna's hand, and that if I was wrong, I would literally eat my own shorts. I'm not kidding. I will literally eat my shorts. But, okay, so, okay, I guess I am eating my own shorts. But you know what? In my defense, at the time of making that video, I was under the impression that Stranger Things 4 was going to be the last season of Stranger Things, and that there wasn't going to be a season 5. So I still think that's a valid prediction, that they are going to cut off Vecna's left hand at one point. So even though I'm eating my own shorts in shame, that is still a valid prediction, and they are cutting off Vecna's hand. Whenever Volume 5 comes out, I will be right, and no one's gonna care, but I'm gonna be right. Anyway, I'm excited to see this war in Hawkins that Dr. Owens was typing up this season. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm just gonna say it. I don't care if everyone hates me for this, but I thought Eddie's death was sad. But anyway, those are all the thoughts that I have today on Stranger Things. If you guys want more Stranger Things videos, please let me know. I can make them. Thanks for watching.